Chapter 91. Server Announcement. Gold Weapon. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 91. Server Announcement. Gold Weapon. Jack glanced at McCrae and continued, "Since you've already prepared your plans, I'll listen to you." Only 10 minutes had passed in the game. Most of the players were still guessing who had obtained the gold-grade weapon. On the Gamers Forum, many people started discussing. McCrae, it must be God McCrae. Who else but God McCrae has the strength to be the first to obtain a gold weapon? No way. It won't be him every time. He's not that good. It must belong to another guild. For example, someone from the Seal Guild. Seal Guild. Never heard of it. Never heard of it. The Seal Guild has just been formed. They're a very famous guild in the first few games. They're the most popular games in the past, the strongest ones among the Dragons and Magic game. I didn't expect even the Seal Guild to come. Will the other powerful guilds come? Weren't we discussing if the golden weapon was taken by someone? Why are we discussing the Seal Guild? I think it still has to be McCrae who got it. God McCrae is invincible. Just as everyone was discussing, a notification appeared in the world announcement. Congratulations! Player McCrae has obtained the first Divine Domain gold weapon, Devil's Wings. McCrae has chosen to announce the attributes of the Devil's Wings. Please take a look. After the world announcement ended, a large number of people checked the Devil's Wings. When everyone saw the Devil's Wings, they were very surprised. Oh my God, this weapon is actually a pair of wings that can fly. And it has too much enhancement on agility. This Devil's Wings has seriously affected the fairness of the game, I object. The game shouldn't have appeared so quickly. Such a powerful weapon. Just as everyone was discussing, the Fire Guild became lively. George, who had just dispersed the meeting, immediately stopped people from going to the City of Light to kill McCrae. And the only ones who could kill McCrae in the Fire Guild were the 7 solo players who had just entered. George stood behind their computers and looked at their screens. He instructed the 7. Listen up, the mission this time is very serious. We originally only wanted to kill McCrae, but we didn't expect him to obtain a gold weapon again. Now, your mission has changed. In addition to killing McCrae, you have to drop his Devil's Wings. If you can't complete it, the reward I promised you just now will be gone. Adam, you're the commander this time. Everything depends on you. George put his hand on a red-haired man. If anyone saw him, they would be very shocked. Because this Adam was an extremely powerful unaffiliated person in Dragons and Magic. Adam was very powerful in any game. On the PK rankings, it had never fallen below 100. After all, Adam played every game out there. If he played seriously, he had the potential to be number 1 in a game. This time, George had invited him over because George had told Adam about McCrae. In the beginning, Adam didn't care much about McCrae. He felt that he was just a person who relied on time to work hard. However, in the next few days, when he saw McCrae who had taken away a large number of first clears of dungeons. This piqued Adam's interest in McCrae. He had promised to come to the Fire Guild to kill McCrae. Adam sat in front of the first computer and looked at the other 6 on his right. Adam looked at them disdainfully. If it's to kill McCrae, I can do it alone. Why do you need to find other people? Do you look down on my strength? Or do you think I'm not strong enough? George felt bad when he heard Adam's tone. George knew a genius like Adam was going to blow it. These geniuses were very narcissistic. In their eyes, they were the strongest. Adding some other members to this mission of just killing one single player. It was an insult to these geniuses. However, to make sure the mission succeeded and please the higher-ups, the 7 people had to act together. Adam, calm down. If you can kill McCrae, your reward will double. Command them well. For the sake of money, I'll forget it this time. The next time there's such a mission, I'll be fine alone. Alright. Hurry up and start. Apart from killing McRae, I also want to obtain his equipment. I understand. Isn't it just by standing at the spawn point and constantly killing McRae to obtain his equipment? I understand. But I want a reward. Every time I kill McRae, I want a reward of 10,000. No problem. George stood behind Adam. He agreed to Adam's request without hesitation. Although this 10,000 wasn't a lot, if it was difficult to obtain McRae's equipment, he would have to kill him many times. It might even take dozens of tries. If that was the case, Adam could get a bonus of hundreds of thousands. This was a huge sum of money for many guilds. However, the Fire Guild was backed by the Fire Financial Group. Just killing McRae a mere dozens of times for hundreds of thousands wasn't a big deal at all. Even if he killed McRae hundreds or thousands of times. Even if he had to be paid millions, and tens of millions. George would have said yes. Because the Fire Guild had money. They didn't care about tens of millions at all. And the value of the Devil's Wings was 15 million. With the first golden weapon and a very rare flying ability, the value of obtaining the Devil's Wings was sufficient. If Adam killed McRae and dropped the Devil's Wings, he would only get a few 100,000. However, George could get millions of yuan as long as he handed over the Devil's Wings to the organization. This Adam was completely working for George, and he was quite thankful to him. And just as the Fire Guild had already planned to use the method to kill McRae to obtain the Devil's Wings, the other financial groups also plotted to obtain it. However, unlike the Fire Guild, who used plundering methods, they wanted to obtain the Devil's Wings through trading. In the game, McRae was in the City of Light, using the Devil's Wings to fly continuously. He suddenly received news from other guilds. McRae opened the chat page and saw many friend requests. McRae knew that these people wanted to buy the Devil's Wings. Chapter 92. The Tempting Forces. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 92. The Tempting Forces. Swag and Hux were in the guild. They were originally discussing how to obtain more silver-grade weapons to let their guild members quickly increase their strength. Gold-grade weapons were definitely too expensive. There was no need to think about this. As this was the first gold-grade weapon, if this weapon were to be placed in the present world, it would be at least dozens of times the price. It might even be 100 times the price. Later on, gold-grade weapons would become more common. If he went to buy a gold weapon now, it would be more about improving reputation. He would forge his own master teacher. Buying a gold-grade weapon could buy 10 silver-grade weapons. This was not worth it. So Swag and Hux didn't care much about gold-grade weapons. But when they saw the panel of the Devil's Wings, both of them lost their calm. Because Devil's Wings were additional equipment. The number of different types of equipment that a person could use was fixed. A main weapon. The main weapon was mainly used to increase attack power. The rest were defensive weapons. There was a breastplate, shoulder armor, wrist guard, pants, and boots. There were also accessories that could enhance mental strength. Ring, necklace, earrings. Only these few could increase attributes. However, there were still some that could increase attributes. That was additional equipment. With additional equipment, he would have one more weapon attribute than the other players. This was very important. Additional equipment existed in other games, such as the previous most popular game, Dragons and Magic. So the two of them also knew the importance of additional equipment. Additional equipment was hard to come by. The most important thing was that this additional equipment could actually let people fly. With it, he could go to many places. After leaving the danger on the ground, he could begin exploring certain places in advance. This was very important for future development, so Swag and Hux both wanted to obtain the Devil's Wings very much. President, in my experience, it's best if we buy this Devil's Wings. This thing is too important for the development of the guild. Even if we don't use it, if we let the other guilds obtain it, their progress in developing the map will be much faster. They can use the Devil's Wings to go to a map that they've never been to and explore in advance. Swag nodded in agreement. Although it was his first time being a guild leader and his first time playing games, Swag still had a strategic mind. Send a message to McRae. Tell him that we're using a lot of money to buy his Devil's Wings. Alright, I understand. I'll go now. With that, Hux was about to return to his seat and inform the guild members. But Hux had just sat down when Swag called him back. Forget it, don't send him any more messages. I'll go straight to the City of Light to find him. I hope he didn't leave. With that said, Swag arrived in front of his computer. He controlled his character to go to the City of Light. Because his level was not high enough, if he went to the City of Light, he would need to use 2 silver coins. When Swag arrived at the City of Light, he directly went to this city to look for McRae. Now, he could only rely on luck. The size of the City of Light was definitely very large. Even if McRae were still here, he might not be able to see him. However, Swag's luck was pretty good this time. After searching for a while, he saw McRae surrounded by a few people. McRae was now surrounded by people from other guilds. They had only one purpose for coming here, and that was to obtain the Devil's Wings. Meanwhile, at McRae's side, he looked at the people around him helplessly. These people were from the big guilds. They came to buy his Devil's Wings. But it was impossible for McRae to sell the Devil's Wings now. The Devil's Wings were very attractive for all these potential buyers. However, to McRae, the Devil's Wings were also very useful. With him, McRae could quickly go to some dungeons that he could challenge. There was no need to waste time by trying to bypass a large number of wild monsters. So this time, McRae couldn't sell it. Unless McRae had something better later on, only then would he consider selling it off. McRae wanted to leave, but the people in front of him didn't let him. In the main city, weapons were not allowed. Otherwise, they would be captured by the city guards. McRae wasn't afraid of guards. But being recorded by the guards on the blacklist was not a good thing. If McRae wanted to leave, these people would shamelessly hold him back. At this moment, someone approached him. He was in charge of an unknown small organization, the Pearl Group. He said to McRae. "Hello, Mr. McRae. I'm here for the Devil's Wings. I know that you don't want to sell this, but I'll give you very generous terms. I'm willing to pay 18 million to buy your Devil's Wings. You must know that in other games, even the first gold weapon, the most expensive one is the one in Dragons and Magic. That only sold for 3 million. The price I gave you is 6 times that of that one." After saying that, the person in charge of Pearl Group looked at McRae confidently. In his opinion, 18 million was enough to move one person. This was normal. In this society, everyone's salary was basically about 3,000 yuan. 18 million. If it was an ordinary person, their salary would be 3,000 yuan a month. Even if he didn't eat or drink, it would still take 180,000 days, 6,000 months, and 500 years. 18 million. This was something an ordinary person could never earn in their entire life. Even if the value of money depreciated in the later stages, it would still take at least 300 years to earn it. Currently, Divine Domain has only been launched for 4 days. The conservative estimate for all item transactions was only 10 million. After all, there were hundreds of millions of players in Divine Domain. And as long as McRae agreed to this deal, the amount of money he could make alone was much more than everyone combined. McRae looked calmly at the people of the Pearl Group. Do you think McRae would be tempted at a time like this? There was also a point to consider, because even in his previous life, McCrae didn't have that much money. Although at that time, he was the god of war, the #1 person in the entire divine domain. By relying on his powerful strength, he had obtained a lot of money. But he had spent all that money. In his previous life, apart from his invincible operation skill on the keyboard, McCrae also never showed mercy in terms of spending money. So in divine domain, McCrae had to always get new payments. The number of people who had taken game money to the real world to actually spend it. It was a low number. The person in charge of Pearl Group looked at McCrae and knew that he had wavered. Because no one could remain calm in front of 18 million. Chapter 93. Crazy Price. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 93. Crazy Price. The person in charge of the Pearl Group knew that he had to continue persuading McCrae to break through his mental defense. The person from the Pearl Group was a very impressive businessman. He knew too well how people treated money. It was very easy to waver. People could abandon everything for money. If not, it just meant that the money offered wasn't enough. It wasn't about money, after all. It was about you. The person in charge of the Pearl Group continued, "Mr. McCrae, do you know why I'm spending so much money to buy your devil's wings? Because it's the first golden weapon. His actual use is not the same as the effects it has on the surface. I'm buying your devil's wings now with a price of 18 million, but if there's a second one now, its value will only be 1 million. Because the halo of the first gold weapon is gone. Without the halo of the only gold weapon, it has no value. After losing this value, it will have returned to its original price. It's just a very rare gold weapon. When the third gold weapon appears, its value will only be 500,000. When the 10th gold weapon appears, its value will only be 100,000. When everyone has a gold weapon in 2 years, the value will only be 1,800 yuan. There are 730 days every 2 years. In these 730 days, this golden weapon will depreciate 10,000 times. Even the most depreciated thing in the world isn't as fast as this. And Mr. McCrae, do you know when the next gold weapon will be released? You don't know. Of course, I don't know either. No one knows. But everyone knows that in at most 5 days, the second gold weapon will appear. In 5 days, your weapon will depreciate 18 times. So, Mr. McCrae, are you willing to sell it here, or are you taking the risk of 18 times depreciation to keep it in your hand for a few days? Mr. McCrae, I think you must think about it, because it's very important to you. Think about it, Mr. McCrae. With this 18 million, you can do whatever you want. With this 18 million, you can be said to be a millionaire. Even if you don't have to work for your entire life, as long as you don't spend much, you can live a rich life without working for your entire life. Imagine a scene, Mr. McCrae. After you have 18 million, you live in a villa by the sea in a sports car. All you do every day is play in the yard with a beer. You don't have to care about life at home. The servants will clean up the house. Your wife uses luxury goods, and the places she goes in and out are all high-end. Your children attend noble schools. Your family is so enviable. If you want such a life, you just have to agree to the deal today. After saying that, he looked at McCrae with a smile. Too many people had chosen to compromise because of his description. He believed that at this moment, McCrae had been convinced by him. McCrae looked at the person in charge of the Pearl Group calmly. Would McCrae be tempted at a time like this? Yes, McCrae was also a human. Those who wouldn't be moved were saints. But McCrae still wouldn't trade the devil's wings to him. Because the devil's wings in McCrae's hand, through these few days of effort, could provide 180 million for him in the future. Even 1.8 billion or 18 billion. Who was McCrae? In his previous life, he was the god of war, the strongest person in divine domain. Would someone like him not know the ways of the world? 18 million was very good, but McCrae had a better choice, so he wouldn't trade the devil's wings. Because the devil's wings in McCrae's hand would be much more valuable in the future than this 18 million. McCrae wasn't a short-sighted person, so he wouldn't agree to this deal. McCrae looked at the person in charge of the Pearl Group confidently. "Sorry, sir, I don't want to sell the devil's wings." All right, as long as you're willing to sell it. Let's have a happy cooperation." "Wait, you said you're not selling. How is that possible? This is 18 million. You won't be able to earn it in your entire life." McCrae shook his head and said confidently, 18 million is a lot. But do you think that with my current status and my reputation in divine domain, I can't use this devil's wings to earn more than 18 million in the future? After saying that, McCrae stared at him. The man from the Pearl Group was also frightened and took a few steps back. In divine domain, supercomputers could capture the expressions and aura of players in front of them. Even computers could release the aura of players. After all, divine domain was a super game. It described people as real people. If someone who had never played divine domain before went to play without him knowing, he wouldn't know that this was a game and would think that it was real. Divine domain could restore a player's aura, so after being frightened by the aura, it would make corresponding movements in the computer, such as fear and shock. And who was McCrae? He was the man of the god of war. In this world, whose aura could compare to McCrae's? That was why the man from the Pearl Group was a little afraid when McCrae released his aura. The people from the other guilds spoke. The person from Skyfire Group said, "You people from the Brightness Group are just petty. You only offered 18 million, and you're trying to buy his devil's wings. Isn't this bullying? Mr. McCrae, our Skyfire Group offers 25 million. Is that all right?" Skyfire Group looked at McCrae with a smile. McCrae was about to say something, but someone spoke faster. "Pfft. You want to buy the devil's wings with 25 million. You're just poor people. Mr. McCrae, our Jianhe Group offers 40 million. Direct money transfer. Do you think that's appropriate?" "Mr. McCrae, we are." In a moment, a few people started to bid. In the next instant, the price was raised to 70 million. Meanwhile, looking at Swag and Hux who were surrounded, the two of them were shocked by the scene just now. When they arrived, they thought they could purchase the devil's wings. Looking at it now, they might not have enough money. Chapter 94. 5 Weapons. 5 Opportunities. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 94. 5 Weapons. 5 Opportunities. Translator. Atlas Studios Editor. Atlas Studios Hux looked at Swag in confusion. "President, I don't understand why these people would fight each other for a gold weapon. Is the first gold weapon that important? After all, in other games, weapons of the same value are only a few hundred yuan. This is already 100,000 times the price. Why is that?" Hux was very confused at this moment. In his opinion, the first gold weapon was the same as the second. Hux was willing to use 10 times the price to use higher level weapons in advance to farm monsters and increase his progress. However, it was impossible for Hux to buy a weapon with hundreds of thousands of times the price. Because it wasn't worth it. As long as they waited for a while, the price of this weapon would drop rapidly. Swag touched his chin and said, "I know you don't understand. Do you think that those who use tens of millions to buy a weapon feel that they are idiots, people who have money but with no place to use it?" Hux nodded. "That's exactly what I thought." Swag continued, "You're right to think this way, because you're not a businessman. You're a player. Players care about experience, and business capitalists care about profit. These businessmen and capitalists are much smarter than you think. Look at all of them. They're like idiots who spent more than 100,000 times the price to buy a weapon. That's just on the surface. Actually, what they bought wasn't the weapon itself, but something else the weapon brought them, like reputation. Because the weapon in McRae's hand is the first gold weapon. In Divine Domain, there are whiteboard weapons, black steel, bronze, silver, gold, platinum, epic, legendary, and mythical. From gold-grade weapons, there's value to compete. You have to remember that the reputation value of the first gold weapon is higher than the second platinum weapon. It's also higher than the second epic weapon. Just the reputation value of the second mythical weapon might not be as much as the first gold weapon. This is because most people have only heard of the first place and never remember second place. This is like how people remember that Mount Everest is the world's #1 peak. But most people won't know who the second peak is. Everyone knows that the Sahara Desert is the biggest desert. At that time, no one will know who the second desert is. Everyone knows Bolt is the fastest person in the world, but that second place is just a little slower from him. No one knows about him. Remember, only the first place will be remembered by others. As long as they obtain the Devil's Wings, they can use it to make a big deal out of it. Let everyone in Divine Domain know the existence of their guild. To showcase their strength and attract a large number of people to their guild. Don't think that it's very stupid of them to use tens of millions to buy a golden weapon. The benefits of this golden weapon are at least dozens of times the money. The first gold weapon, the first platinum weapon, the first epic weapon, the first legendary weapon, the first mythical weapon, there are only 5 weapons in total. 5 weapons are 5 chances to show their faces. Through these 5 chances, they will obtain even more things. There are only hundreds of millions of players in Divine Domain now, but on Earth, there are at least hundreds of billions of people. In the future, there will be tens of billions of people playing games. Sooner or later, more people will come to Divine Domain. The money spent now can be spent dozens of times less in the later stages. These businessmen are really smart. I see. President, I understand, Hux nodded thoughtfully. And just as the two of them were discussing, McRae, who was surrounded, was already annoyed. He opened the Devil's Wings behind him and flew into the sky. Then, he quickly went towards the city gate. As for the people in charge of the corporations who were discussing with McRae, they immediately chased after him when they saw him fly away. But how could they be faster than the flying McRae? Putting aside the speed, even if it was a large number of buildings, they had to keep jumping to cross them. McRae flew away under everyone's gaze. After McRae flew away, a large number of the company heads were still very indignant. But now, they really couldn't catch up. Just as everyone was thinking of how to find McRae, someone thought of a solution. That was to use the loudspeaker to continuously broadcast it throughout the entire beginner's area. The megaphone was a game tool that existed in every game. It could let people see your words through the broadcast. However, there was a limit to the megaphone. It could only be heard by one area of players. And if the other party wasn't willing to listen, they could directly block the loudspeaker. However, they had no choice but to do so. In the megaphone, distance was calculated. There was a 1-kilometer loudspeaker, a 10-kilometer one, and a 100-kilometer one. A 100-kilometer loudspeaker was 10,000 yuan per use. It was very expensive. However, in the eyes of those in charge, 10,000 wasn't a big deal. To them, this money was just money. It was not worth mentioning. Compared to being able to contact McRae, these were insignificant. The person in charge of the Pearl Group shouted at McRae through the 100-kilometer loudspeaker. Mr. McRae, I'm the person in charge of the Pearl Group. We can discuss the money to buy the Devil's Wings, as long as you ask. Once the person in charge shouted, everyone who was fighting monsters and doing missions turned to look at the sky. On the World Forum in Divine Domain, someone said. Did you hear anything? I don't know if I'm hallucinating. I feel like there's someone talking in the sky. Did you just start the game? This is a loudspeaker. It uses money to broadcast it so that everyone can hear it. From the sound of this loudspeaker, it seems like someone wants to buy the devil's wings in McRae's hand. Yes, this is it. I heard the word devil's wings just now. It should be this. How much do you think this devil's wings can be sold for? I think it's at most 1 million. In other games, level 30 gold weapons are basically at this price. Chapter 95. Yellow Tea Guild. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 95. Yellow Tea Guild. 1 million. That's too little. After all, there are hundreds of millions of players in Divine Domain. I think it should be 2 million. No, I think it's 3 million. That's probably the price. It's impossible for it to be 3 million. After all, the one in Dragons and Magic that has been popular for 20 years is only 3 million. Although, Divine Domain does have plenty of potential, with a large number of new players coming over every day. But you have to know that at that time, it took a month for Dragons and Magic to spawn this gold weapon. And at that time, Dragons and Magic already had 1 billion players. Yet it's only 3 million. There are only a few 100 million people in Divine Domain now. It's good enough to have 2 million. If it can be bought in a week, I believe he can sell it for 3 million. If it appears in a month, he can sell for 5 million. Now, it's at most 2 million. On the World Forum, when everyone guessed that McRae's Devil's Wings could only buy 2 million yuan. The people who were looking for McRae suddenly reacted. Yeah, we can send a message to McRae through the megaphone. Instantly, a large number of financial groups, corporations, and guilds sent a message to McRae through the megaphone. Fortunately, there was a limitation to the megaphone. When other people spoke, the second megaphone couldn't talk. It was only after the previous one finished speaking that it was his turn to speak. Otherwise, if everyone honked, they wouldn't be able to hear the news. A guild member immediately bought a loudspeaker and shouted at McRae. Hello, Mr. McRae. I'm from the Yellow Tea Guild. We offer 10 million to buy your devil's wings. If you are willing, you can find me alone on the World Forum. The people from the Yellow Tea Guild immediately exploded on the World Forum. What? 10 million. Why is it so expensive? After all, even among Dragons and Magic, their golden weapon was only bought for 3 million. Why is this one in Divine Domain so expensive? 10 million is too expensive. This person directly killed the competition. It's impossible for anyone to continue increasing the price. I agree. This premium is too serious. In the loudspeaker. You want to buy the devil's wings for 10 million. You're dreaming. Mr. McRae. We're from the 3 Funeral Financial Group. We use 15 million to buy your weapon. If you're willing, let's trade directly in the City of Light. I'm the person in charge of the Fast Horse Group. We're willing to pay 17 million to buy the devil's wings in Mr. McRae's hand. I wonder what you think. We are, in a moment, through the loudspeaker, the price of the devil's wings was raised to 30 million. To many gamers, this was unimaginable. On the World Forum. F*CK, this is 30 million. What? Isn't it just a level 30 gold weapon? Do they have money and nowhere to spend it? Don't tell me they're laundering money here. If they've never seen a gold weapon, my Dragons and Magic account has an entire set of gold weapons. I only need 100,000. Are you an idiot? He wants a level 30 gold weapon in Divine Domain. How can the popularity of your Dragons and Magic compare to the current Divine Domain? Trash. This price is ridiculous. How can something virtual be sold for more than 10 million? I don't believe it if it's not money laundering. That's right, that's right. How can there be such an expensive thing? Just as everyone was discussing on the World Forum. At McRae's place, he listened to their constant bids. McRae didn't block the megaphone, mainly because it could kill time when he was traveling. Anyway, when he was in the air, there was no need to worry about danger. He could just fly over. Just as McRae was listening intently, in the real world, Jack, who was sitting beside McRae, stuck his head over. Just now, Jack was leveling up and fighting monsters alone, but he suddenly heard the sound of a loudspeaker. When he heard the second loudspeaker use 10 million to buy the Devil's Wings, he was shocked. He thought that McRae would be directly selling it right away, but McRae continued to control his character as if he didn't hear it. Jack thought McRae had blocked the loudspeaker, so he reminded McRae to turn it on. In the end, McRae's loudspeaker was always on. *CK Didn't you hear that person shout 10 million just now? Jack looked at McRae in shock. If he hadn't heard that, it would have been a waste of 10 million. I heard that. Jack looked at McRae in surprise. You heard that? Why didn't you contact him? Didn't you hear how much money it was? That's 10 million. 10 million isn't 1,000. McRae nodded. I heard that. I just don't want to sell it. Why bother with him? When Jack heard McRae's words, he stood up from his seat. 10 million, that's 10 million. Do you know how good a house can be bought with 10 million? How good a sports car can be bought? Listen to my feelings and contact that person. After this person, it might be very difficult to sell it to anyone. You also know that a weapon that just came out is very expensive. Don't you know the simple principle of selling it at a high price and buying at a low price? McRae smiled and said, Of course I know that. I don't want to sell it. Even if I wanted to, the price is too low. What's too low? Oh my God, have you played games before? Do you know the market price of games? In any game, 10 million to buy a tool is a lot of money. Besides, yours is only a level 30 gold weapon. If someone with 10 million wants to buy it, I'd think he hit his head and hurt his brain. Otherwise, this person wouldn't be spending 10 million on a golden weapon. It's really too little. If you don't believe me, just continue listening. Jack looked at McRae in disbelief. If McRae hadn't been his best friend, at this moment, Jack would think that McRae was lying to him. Jack returned to his seat. Just as he sat down, another message came through the loudspeaker. At this moment, the price reached 15 million. Jack, who had just sat down, stood up again excitedly. Chapter 96. Shocking the World Forum. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 96. Shocking the World Forum. 15 million. How is that possible? Is this person crazy? Or is their money stolen from banks? Why would they use 15 million to buy a gold weapon? Jack had just gotten excited when the loudspeaker sounded again. The price of 17 million hit Jack's heart again. At this moment, he didn't understand why so many people would use tens of millions to buy a game item. Furthermore, this game item would definitely depreciate. At this moment, Jack began to doubt the world. This had a huge impact on him. Jack looked at McRae in confusion. Why is that? How can this be? Why would they use so much money to buy a virtual item? McRae, do you know how much 17 million is? With our weapon, if we use 100 yuan notes to put in this house, we can fill up half the bedroom. If you want to spend it, you can buy the most suitable sports car. If you have 17 million and shout it out on the street, if no one robs you, there will be a large number of beautiful women who want to be your lover. You can try any beauty. McRae looked at Jack, who was acting a little crazy, and looked at him speechlessly. Of course I know. 17 million is worth it, but even 17 million can't buy the Devil's Wings. The value of the Devil's Wings far exceeds your imagination. At this moment, Jack couldn't refute McRae anymore, because what he had just said was right. Jack looked at McCrae in confusion. I can't figure out why. Looking at Jack's confusion, McCrae knew that Jack wouldn't be able to sleep well until he explained everything to Jack today. Actually, this is a very simple principle. That's the devil's wings. Its value is worth this price. You might think that this gold weapon is worth at most $1 million. It is, after all, the first weapon. If it was the previous best game, Dragons and Magic, it would indeed be worth $1 million. But do you know how popular Divine Domain is? Jack shook his head. Almost 1 billion people have come to Divine Domain to play now, and it's only a result of 4 days. Do you know the situation of Dragons and Magic? On the 4th day, there were only tens of millions of people. In the game Dragons and Magic, it took half a year for 1 billion players to reach it, but Divine Domain only took 4 days. 4 days, and the other is half a year. The difference between these two isn't just numbers. This means one thing. In terms of popularity, the game Dragons and Magic can't compare to Divine Domain. And this phenomenon has been noticed by a large number of capital and guilds. Now, all capital knows that the next direction to earn money is in Divine Domain. I can tell you very responsibly that in the future, there will be tens of billions of people playing the game Divine Domain. It's not 10 billion, 20 billion people. It's more than 80 billion people. The peak of Dragons and Magic is only a few billion. This leads to one thing. In terms of investment, Dragons and Magic can't compare to Divine Domain. Because after this investment, the returns couldn't compare to the returns in Divine Domain. Just because Divine Domain was unusually popular, this created a large amount of capital. That's why these guys are spending a large amount of money to buy this first gold weapon. The first gold weapon, the first platinum weapon, the first epic weapon, the first legendary weapon, the first mythical weapon, every time, the first weapon is a chance for everyone to show their faces. It will let a large number of people remember the people of this guild. Watch as they spend a large amount of money to buy a game item that would quickly depreciate. But didn't you notice how much money the first weapon brought to me? Me, a mere single person. This is the reason why those guilds and corporations will spend a lot of money to buy this gold weapon in my hand. So that's how it is. I understand. Jack now understood what was going on. Do you know the economy that well? McCrae shook his head. It wasn't that McCrae knew much about economics, but because McCrae had been through this before, so he knew. Just as McCrae and Jack were chatting, the price of the Devil's Wings had reached 30 million. At this moment, there was still a large amount of capital to constantly increase the price. In a short while, the price reached 40 million. Jack didn't play Divine Domain anymore. He stood behind McCrae and looked at his computer. Then, offers kept appearing on it. And McCrae at the bidding center had yet to say a word. If you don't want to sell, just use the loudspeaker and tell them. Jack was numb to the price. He didn't know why McCrae didn't say it directly. I don't want to tell them. Why? Because I don't have money. These people from these corporations can use 10,000 to buy a loudspeaker and shout there, but I can't bear to use 10 million to buy a loudspeaker. At most, I'll just ignore them. Jack looked at McCrae speechlessly. As long as you agree, you'll immediately be rich. 40 million. This is the profit of my dad's entire company in a year. After all, my dad's total assets are only 1.4 billion. If the business is bad, the profit in a year might not even be 20 million. You can earn 40 million in just 4 days. You're so much more awesome than my dad. McCrae laughed when he heard that. This is nothing. At the late stage of Divine Language, you'll know how profitable Divine Domain is. While Jack and McCrae were chatting, a new bid was made in the game Divine Domain. 50 million, Mr. McCrae. Our Lima Group is willing to pay 50 million to buy the Devil's Wings in your hand. If you're willing, you can come and find me directly. When the person in charge of the Lima group said his price, everyone in Divine Domain was numb. Many people stopped what they were doing and listened to the loudspeakers. Some people, because they were too serious, didn't notice that they were surrounded by wild monsters in the wilderness and killed. Even those who had just revived were listening to the bids of the megaphones at the resurrection point. On the World Forum, a large number of people were discussing. This is too fake. What 50 million? This is simply ridiculous. It's ridiculous. Can't it be more fake? Chapter 97. Angry George. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 97. Angry George. I've already called the police. Such obvious money laundering is too horrible. God McCrae is awesome. I didn't expect so many people to snatch a gold weapon. In that case, God McCrae is really impressive. He obtained a gold weapon in just 4 days. I'm numb. I'm completely numb. I can accept increasing the price. It feels like a dream. Science fiction. Just as everyone was shouting, Anna and Alice, who were still in the City of Light, were also listening to this news. The two girls were numb when they heard the price. This is too terrifying. A gold weapon sold for 50 million just like that. Anna, do you think God McCrae will give you some money after he sells the devil's wings? You drew this devil's wings for him. Anna shook her head. I don't know either, but it doesn't matter as long as I can be with God McCrae. Alice looked at Anna in surprise. When did you become so easygoing? Do you think you've taken a fancy to God McCrae? Anna, who was walking, blushed when she heard Alice's words. She hurriedly shook her head and said, No, I think God McCrae got the weapon himself. I only opened it for him. It's the same without me, so there's no need to pay me. Anna lowered her head. Alice didn't believe that a woman would do this. It could only mean one thing. This woman liked him. Alice's hand grabbed Anna's waist and kept scratching her. And this itchy feeling was transmitted to Anna through the computer. And after Anna was tickled by Alice in the computer, she could only lie on the ground and keep begging. Alice let go of Anna. Alice, I want to scratch you too. Stop. Alice, who let go of Anna, immediately ran. Anna, who wanted revenge, chased after him. As time passed in the game, the price of the devil's wings had reached 60 million. Even so, there were still people constantly bidding, which shocked a large number of people. Just as everyone was shocked, the Fire Guild was discussing the meeting. In the office of the Fire Guild, George was looking coldly at his subordinates. George slammed his hand on the desk, giving the people below a shock. Tell me, what happened? Why did you fail this time? I want an explanation. Beside George was the genius Adam. BL.net Adam played with the pen in front of him with a nonchalant expression. To Adam, this mission was not his responsibility. He didn't have to be afraid of George at all. Even if it was Adam's fault, Adam didn't care. Because this was Adam's personality. He was naturally disobedient. If George dared to say anything bad about him, he would fight and slap George in the face. As for his salary after being fired, Adam had never thought about it. In Adam's eyes, only the strong had the right to speak loudly to him. George was a high official of the Fire Group, and that was how he became the president of the Fire Guild. Adam wouldn't be convinced. However, as long as George didn't receive an order he didn't want to do, Adam would still cooperate with him. No matter what, George was still the boss. Giving him some face would make him feel better. When Loken heard George's words, he stood up in fear. Then he said to George, President, it's like this. We've already found McCrae's place, but we can't do anything in the City of Light. We originally wanted him to go out and kill him after the City of Light. But I didn't expect those other people to come and keep holding him back. Then he flew away with the devil's wings. As you know, the devil's wings are so fast. After we leave the city, he'll be gone long ago. After hearing Loken's report, George felt an anger about to burst out of his chest. At this moment, George's face was red from anger. When Loken saw this, he took a few steps back in fear that George would beat him up when he got angry. By the way, President, although we don't know where McRae's is, we know his friend is there. Hearing Loken's words, George, who was about to flare up, looked at him. Speak. George's appearance frightened Loken, and he could only swallow. Here's the thing. When we were scouting for information, we saw McRae often with 2 girls. I've checked on these 2 girls. They look like they just joined the McRae guild. However, the 2 of them just entered McRae's guild. McRae took one of them to farm monsters with him every day. We suspect that these 2 women have special feelings for him. It might even be a romantic one. If they're really a couple, it'll be much easier for us. It doesn't matter even if they aren't a couple. As long as it's someone from their guild, we just have to surround these 2 and threaten McRae to appear. If McRae doesn't come, we'll kill this woman until she's level 0. President, think about it. McRae is their president, but if he can't even protect his teammates, who else will follow him? Under such pressure, he'll definitely come. This is what will happen when he gets there. We surround him and keep killing him to get his equipment. Loken looked at George nervously. George, who had been a little angry after hearing Loken's plan, recovered. His expression turned normal. Not a bad plan. You did well. Alright, quickly find McRae's 2 teammates. Remember not to make me wait anymore. If you don't find McRae before the second gold weapon comes out, or at least make him appear in front of me, I don't think I need to say it. You know my methods. This is my last warning. Do well and don't disappoint me. After hearing that, Loken kept nodding his head. Yes, yes, yes. We will definitely do a good job this time. Please don't worry, President. We will definitely be able to take down McRae and let our Fire Guild's reputation become famous in Divine Domain. George smiled when he heard that. Very good, go down. Remember to be fast. Don't make me wait, okay? Everyone, disperse. Those from the hunting team, stay behind. After George finished speaking, Loken and his subordinates immediately left the meeting room. Now he was afraid of George. George was famous for his bad temper. Of course, George made Loken so afraid not because he was powerful, but because he was a high-level member of the Fire Financial Group. Furthermore, as a high-level official, he had gone up through connections. George was a bad-tempered person with poor abilities. Many people in the company had bad opinions of George. However, George had someone higher up protecting him, so he wasn't afraid. And Loken didn't dare to resist George's orders. Because he had a family. Loken had 4 children and his wife to support. His wife had to take care of the 4 children and couldn't go to work. All the financial pressure in the house came to George. For his family, Loken could tolerate George's temper. Of course, Loken also wanted to leave, but at his age, it was very difficult for anyone to be willing to hire him. Playing games was something the youth did, after all. Loken used to be a professional team member and was a very famous figure in various games. But now that he had left the competition, Loken thought that he was the oldest and most experienced person in games within this company. Although Loken's operation was only considered excellent in the company and not exactly the very best. Loken's big heart and the fact that he would never panic when he was at a disadvantage made the financial group keep him. Actually, Loken was also responsible for communications in the guild. Although his operation wasn't top-notch, his tactics, especially team tactics, were top-notch. Chapter 98. Live Broadcast Pursuit. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 98. Live Broadcast Pursuit. At Anna and Alice's place, the two of them had already left the City of Light. Now, McCrae was using the Devil's Wings to head towards the Silver Dragon Palace. McCrae went there because there was equipment that he needed very much. That was the strongest set at level 30, the Silver Dragon set. The Silver Dragon set was a gold set after level 30. Apart from the main weapon, the entire Silver Dragon set had all the other equipment. The set included 7 pieces of equipment such as breastplate, shoulder armor, wrist guard, pants, boots, earrings, rings, necklaces, and so on. Once he obtained the Silver Dragon set, he could obtain several powerful attributes. The strongest point of the Silver Dragon set was full magic resistance below level 30. In other words, all magic attacks below level 30 did not hurt McCrae at all. Even if 10,000 level 29 mages used magic to bombard McCrae with firepower that could flip the entire map over, it was still useless against him. Another powerful attribute was that after obtaining the Silver Dragon set, McCrae's HP and MP recovery increased greatly. It was like having a HP and mana buff. This attribute was very important to experts in the early stages. Especially to McCrae. It was very important. Because McCrae was playing solo now. The unique characteristic of an unaffiliated player was that they could use the moves of all classes. This meant that McCrae could stand in place and use his skills indefinitely. He was completely a skill bomber. As long as he had enough mana, McCrae could attack indefinitely. In the early stages, everyone's mana was limited. Many people, including mages, were very careful when using skills. Because of the limited mana, it limited everyone's output. If he wanted to attack with all his strength, he needed to have enough mana. However, the best way in the early stages was to buy a large amount of blue potions with the money in the game. However, in the beginning, everyone was an ordinary person. How could they have the money to buy blue potions? Everyone spent their money bit by bit. Because they didn't have enough money, everyone's leveling speed was very slow. Only those with money could use the money in real life to buy enough blue potions to use. Then, they used their skills to farm monsters. This was why, when most players were around level 10, the players of those guilds and corporations had already leveled up to above level 20. Because they had enough financial support behind them to provide them with enough blue potions. It allowed them to use skills to quickly eliminate the small monsters. It would save them a lot of time. It was because of these two attributes that McCrae wanted the Silver Dragon set. Back to Anna and Alice. The two of them moved towards the Silver Dragon Palace according to McCrae's guidance. Because McCrae's Devil's Wings couldn't bring the two of them up. He could only let the two girls walk over. Alice and Anna kept walking towards the designated place on a plain. Because the map that McCrae had given them had already shown the two of them where the monsters were constantly. So the two of them could constantly bypass the danger according to the map's guidance. Because there was no danger, the two of them lowered their guard against their surroundings. Just as Alice and Anna were chatting while walking. At the edge of the plain under their feet, a person saw Alice and Anna. He saw Alice and Anna's IDs with the eagle eye skill. When this person saw their IDs, he smiled. Then, he muttered to himself, "I've found these two. Seems like I can inform President George and Loken now." In the real world, in the fire group building. He had just found Alice and Anna, and the person had left his seat. Then, he reported his news to George and Loken. In the office, George was sitting in a chair when he heard his subordinate's message. His originally serious face now revealed a long-lost smile. George looked at Loken and said, "Loken, set off. Have your men capture Angelina and the delicate thug. Then, use these two people as our hostages and lure McCrae to the ambush location. Kill him as soon as he appears. In order to increase the effect of the show, I'll let someone stream the entire process of you killing McCrae. Remember to kill McCrae to level 0. Loken, who who was beside George, immediately stood up when he heard George's words. He said to George, "Yes, I'll definitely complete the mission." In the game, at this moment, Loken was rushing towards Anna and Alice with more than 20 people according to the position provided by his teammates. In order to speed up, Loken brought 4 rogues and let them take turns to use stealth and go invisible as a group. He wanted them to reduce their chances of being discovered by wild monsters. If they didn't do this, Loken and the other 20 people would probably have to fight once in just a few minutes. It would be completely impossible to capture Anna and Alice. And at Alice and Anna's place, the 2 of them had just left the plains and arrived at a forest. The 2 of them walked and listened to the different offers coming from the world loudspeaker. The price of the devil's wings had reached 70 million. Alice listened to the constant sounds above her head and sighed. My God, the price of a devil's wings has reached 70 million. I've never seen so much money in my life. Is it necessary for the devil's wings? Are they money printers or something, spending it like this? Alice complained as she walked. Actually, Alice was also a rich girl. But she also had a few houses in her hands. With the monthly rent, he could earn 10,000 yuan a month. This was already a high-income person by normal standards. However, the bids today were all raised by tens of millions. They were constantly hyping up to buy the devil's wings. Under these tens of millions, Alice felt very poor. Alice looked at Anna and asked, "Anna, do you think President McRae will buy the devil's wings? After all, no one can tolerate the temptation of so much money." Anna shook her head. "I don't know, but with so many people offering constantly, that means this devil's wings is worth it. He has that value. If President McRae is a rich man, I don't think he'll buy it." Chapter 99. Magic Skill, Cage Imprisonment. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 99. Magic Skill, Cage Imprisonment. Translator. Atlas Studios Editor. Atlas Studios. After hearing Anna's analysis, Alice nodded in agreement. Alice didn't understand why the devil's wings would be so expensive, but with so many people buying it, it meant that it had this value. Just as Alice was thinking, the sound of grass shaking began to appear in the surrounding forest. Divine Domain was known as a perfect restoration of the real world. So when players touched the bushes, they would make a sound. When they moved, there would be the sound of footsteps. She heard something. The sound of it touching the bushes as it moved made Alice nervous. Because according to the map McRae gave, it was impossible to encounter any creatures along the way. But now, other creatures had appeared. Alice listened intently to the voice. After listening for a while, she immediately became nervous. Because Alice realized that the thing that made the sound was not a wild monster, but a player. Because the sound of a player's boots on the ground was very different from that of a wild monster. And Alice realized that there were many sounds of movement. They were quickly approaching the 2 of them. Alice immediately knew that she had been discovered. She reached out and protected Anna behind her. He picked up his wand and said to the bushes in front of him, "Who is it? Come out." Alice had just finished speaking when a middle-aged man's voice sounded on the other side of the bushes. "I didn't expect to find you so quickly. Even the real God is helping us now." With that said, a figure came out of the bushes. A warrior appeared from the bushes, along with others. When Alice saw these people, she was very nervous. Because in front of these people's IDs, the word "fire" was added. Alice immediately knew who these people were. "You're from the Fire Guild." The commander of this operation was Loken. He looked at Alice in surprise. Loken said, "I didn't expect a girl like you to analyze the situation so quickly. In that case, let's not waste our time. We know that you're from the McRae Guild. Drop whatever you're doing and come with us now." Loken's voice was neither anxious nor impatient, but it sounded very terrifying to Alice. Alice knew that McRae and the Fire Guild were in conflict. Furthermore, he knew that the people of the Fire Guild had always wanted to kill McCrae and make their reputation known. When Alice saw their IDs, she already knew what these people were planning to do. "Alice, what do we do now?" Anna, who was protected, hid behind Alice nervously. Alice turned back to look at Anna and said to her, "In a while, I'll drag them for time. Run as fast as you can. If you can't escape, run to the nest of those wild monsters and perish with them." Anna nodded after hearing that. When Loken heard their conversation, he said disdainfully, "Sorry, you can't escape today, because we've surrounded you. Stop hiding. Come out." After Loken finished speaking, people from the Fire Guild appeared around Alice and Anna. After looking around, Alice and Anna were afraid. Because there were already 20 players around them. On their IDs were people from the Fire Guild. Alice looked at Loken and said, "What are you doing? Aren't you afraid of President McCrae's revenge?" When Loken heard Alice's words, he smiled and said, "McCrae's revenge? Sorry, Mississippi. Our goal this time is to kill McCrae, and our goal is to kill him until he reaches level 0. As for why I captured you, you can be the hostages and force McCrae to appear. Ladies, come with us." When Alice heard Loken's answer, her face darkened. Alice had guessed what Loken was planning to do, but now that she heard it herself, the other party's answer gave her more despair. Alice's despair was not because she would be killed. She was afraid that McCrae would come and save them. If McCrae was in danger because of the two of them, Alice would be very sad. Alice knew that she couldn't be caught by the person in front of her at this time. "Anna, run. Remember, even if you die, don't let them catch you." After saying that, Alice ran in a direction. When Anna heard that, she ran in the opposite direction from Alice. Loken looked at the two people who were about to run and didn't panic at all. Loken said to his subordinates, "Attack, capture those two." After his order was given, the two mages of the Fire Guild immediately took action. They had already prepared a skill for them. Magic skill, Cage Imprisonment. The skills of the two mages were activated. Then, two cages made of iron appeared in the sky. They quickly descended. The two mages directly predicted their position. Using this skill, they were able to accurately capture Anna and Alice. The cage that locked the two of them quickly shrank, and then became the height and the width of a person. Loken walked in front of Alice. Then he said to Alice, "As long as the two of you cooperate and get McCrae to call me over, I'll ensure that nothing happens to the two of you." Alice looked at Loken angrily and said, "You want me to ambush President McCrae? Dream on. I won't do it." Looking at the stubborn Alice, Loken said indifferently, "It doesn't matter if you don't have news from McCrae. Anyway, I have a way to get McCrae to call him over. However, let's see if McCrae values the two of you. If he doesn't, it's useless." When Alice heard Loken's words, she thought for a moment and immediately said, "You want to use the loudspeaker to let President McCrae hear your news." Loken looked at Alice in admiration and then nodded. "I didn't expect you to be so smart to think of this idea so quickly." Hearing Loken's words, Alice was a little desperate. Alice didn't want McCrae to come over now, but she secretly still did. Alice hoped McCrae would come because she wanted to know if her status in McCrae's heart was high. If McCrae came over, it meant that he still cared about her. Chapter 100. Shocking the World Forum. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 100. Shocking the World Forum. Alice didn't want McCrae to come over because, in Alice's opinion, there were at least 20 people from the Fire Guild in front of her. McCrae was alone. No matter how strong he was, it was impossible for him to win against so many people. If McCrae came, he might very well be killed by the members of the Fire Guild. As long as McCrae died once, McCrae's invincible image in the hearts of all Divine Domain players would be gone. When the time came for building a real guild at level 35, not many people would come. Thinking of this, Alice knew that she had to do something at this time. Alice calmly looked at Loken and said, "I think you're overestimating our position in McRae's heart. The two of us are just two very lousy rookies. Do you think McRae would risk it for two rookies?" After hearing Alice's words, Loken sneered and said, "Do you think we won't investigate him when we want to kill someone? Our people have long observed you since the two of you joined McRae's guild. McRae has been bringing the two of you to level up. There are only a few people in the current McRae guild. The only people who have such treatment are the two of you. But even if McRae doesn't come, it doesn't matter. We'll honk and keep saying he's afraid of us, the Fire Guild. Anyway, we've already achieved the effect." Alice's eyes looked at Loken. If her strength allowed it, Alice really wanted to kill this member of the Fire Guild. Loken ignored Alice. Loken bought a few megaphones and started broadcasting them in the world. The world's megaphone broadcast. "Hello, McRae. I'm from the Fire Guild. The members from your guild, Angelina and the Delicate Thug. We've captured both of them. If you don't want to see them get killed to level 0 by the Fire Guild, bring the Devil's Wings to Giant Wolf Grassland and find us. Let me warn you. We only have an hour. If you don't come over, we'll attack." When Alice and Anna heard Loken's announcement, they looked at him angrily. However, Loken looked indifferent. Loken's loudspeaker had only been released for a second when all the players of Divine Domain were shocked. In their eyes, McRae was so powerful now. It was a very bad idea to provoke him directly. On the World Forum, everyone exploded. They began to communicate frantically. "Oh my God, this person from the Fire Guild has become enemies with McRae. Capturing McRae's members and making him bring the Devil's Wings to the Giant Wolf Grassland. This is obviously a trap. They probably want to kill McRae and drop the Devil's Wings," someone said. "This person from the Fire Guild is probably trying to anger McRae, but McRae has to go. Otherwise, McRae's image will be lost in everyone's eyes." Someone else said. "People of the Fire Guild, you did the right thing. I've long been unhappy with this McRae. I'll come and watch the scene now. The Giant Wolf Grassland, the closest place is the City of Light. I want to teleport there." The third person said enthusiastically. "I want to go too. McRae's battle and the battle with the Fire Guild will definitely be very interesting." The fourth person said. "Oh my God, it actually costs 2 silver coins to go to the City of Light. This is too expensive. However, in order to see this battle, I'm willing to spend this money." The third commenter said. In the City of Light, a large number of players arrived through the teleportation array. The City of Light, which could originally hold millions of players, suddenly became crowded. There were almost 1 billion players in Divine Domain. Even if only a small number of people wanted to come, with 1 billion players, it was still a lot. The large number of players made the whole place very packed due to the collision mechanics. Many people couldn't leave the city and were stuck in place, unable to move. The people who had just been transported saw that in the City of Light, a large number of people were constantly climbing over houses and running out of the city. And in the City of Light, casually climbing the city wall was not allowed. There were city guards constantly catching the people who crossed the city wall. On the city wall, arrows were continuously fired at the players. And back to McRae. McRae stopped in midair. He had already received the message from the Fire Guild. In midair, he muttered to himself, "Do you want to make yourself famous by killing me when everyone is around? Smart scheme, making me unable to dodge the battle, forcing me to fight. You think you can kill me with just the sheer number of people? Laughable. Seems like it's time to let them know the difference between us. Since you want to become famous by killing, I can beat you at your own game and kill you. Then, I'll let everyone know how strong I am and attract more experts to the guild. Perfect. After obtaining the Silver Dragon set, I'll go fight a level 35 dungeon to obtain the guild token. My guild will be even more famous after this. And in reality, Jack, who was beside McCrae, looked at him and said, "What are you planning to do?" McCrae glanced at Jack and said, "What should I do? Of course I'll kill my way through them. Let them know how strong I am. If I don't go, then all our previous efforts will be in vain. They want to use us as stepping stones. Then I'll let them see that the stepping stone in their eyes is actually a huge mountain that they can never cross." Jack nodded at McCrae's words. Then Jack looked at McCrae and said, "Do you want me to help? There are many people in the Fire Guild. Can you handle it?" McCrae said confidently, "You underestimate my strength. In front of me, numbers are meaningless. And if I kill them alone, the impact on the others will be even greater. It can make our guild more famous." On this matter, the people of the Fire Guild actually helped us. After hearing McCrae's words, Jack continued to control his character to level up. At this moment, he also knew that going up would only result in death, so he didn't want to go and drag him down. In the game, McCrae flew towards the giant wolf grassland at his fastest speed. However, he was quite far away from the place, so it would take some time for McCrae to fly there. And in the giant wolf grassland, the Fire Guild's hunting team had arrived. The president of the Fire Guild, George, had arrived. A large number of players had already appeared around the Fire Guild. These people had come here through the City of Light.